Hard work. That's what I most remember about growing up on a farm. Hi, I'm Darrel Rowland. I'm the Public Affairs Editor of the Columbus Dispatch. How you doing? This is the first installment. Yes, I'm sitting right beside the roadway. You can hear the traffic. It's the first installment of our Back Home Again series, in which we have reporters from Gannett, Ohio newspapers go back home again to take the temperature of folks in their old stomping grounds on how they feel about this presidential election this year in this country. You can see over my shoulder the barn where I once played. I mowed hay, did crazy stuff. Look over this way. You have a tree-covered hillside. Those trees were not there at all when I grew up here. Yeah, I moved away in the 60s, so things have changed just a tad. This was a pasture field. We had just a very modest 10 head of cows, but they kept it pretty well clipped. We would sled ride down this hill, so it wasn't all hard work out here in the country. Sometimes we had sleds, sometimes we used, believe it or not, scoop shovels and gone down the hill. So the house is new since we were here. I don't know if the old one burned down or what. I say hard work. Again, I was in just started 5th grade when we moved away from here, so it was mainly watching, although you got to do some chores even at that young age. My father farmed this land. We had about 80 acres. He also worked in a factory at the Westinghouse plant over in Mansfield, about 20 miles away. So yeah, even though we had just a few cows, cows demand to be milked every morning and evening. They're picky about that. They're kind of intolerant of having delays. So 2 older brothers that are 11 and 13 years older than me, they got most of that, and my mom. They called her a farm wife. That sounds like a disparaging term. A lot of people do that, but again, that just means hard work. You know, she did all the household chores, and she helped in the field, she helped in the barn, whatever. And a lot of folks wear that title honorably. When I was 5 years old, I drove a tractor for the first time, just picking up, pulling a wagon so my dad and brothers could pick up bales of hay in the field. So this is how it is living in the country. Again, haven't been here for over 50 years. Somebody I know stops and talks to me. You know, obviously no social media, nothing close to that, but we knew all of our neighbors. We had a thing called community club where the parents would go and play euchre and other wild games like that. I tell you, you heard terms that you never heard before, like Sam Hill and Sow Belly and Judas Priest. I didn't hear about them till the rock band came along, but it was a popular thing in metropolitan Jeromesville, Ohio. Where is Jeromesville, you're saying, by the way? Where is this dude? So I'm about 4 miles outside of Jeromesville. That pinpoints it, right? Well, Jeromesville is about halfway between Mansfield and Worcester. Okay? And that is actually about halfway between Cleveland and Columbus. And this is such a modest farm, certainly by today's standards. 80 acres is nothing. I talked to people earlier today who farm about 2,000 acres, and that's what it takes. You know, we would have never made it even back then without Dad's factory job and, you know, a lot of, frankly, free labor from everyone in the family. You can just imagine the scale it takes today to run a farm and how that influences people. But, you know, it gets people closer to the earth, I think, and they talk about salt of the earth people. We didn't have a baler. We had to borrow one from Petey Hassinger up the road that way. He also had the only combine in the neighborhood, so I don't know what arrangement Dad had with him to give me part of the crops or money or whatever, but anytime it was baling or combining time, we had to call on Petey. It's a good place to grow up. A lot of roots are here, so thank you. Next we'll go into the actual town of Jeromesville. So here we are in the big city now. I just started 5th grade when we moved off the farm. I tell you, if you've never been to an auction where all your possessions, or at least most of your possessions, are being sold off, let me just say, even as a punk kid, it's a pretty emotional experience. So we moved into this 2-bedroom house here. We're 2 houses from the edge of Jeromesville. So yeah, I'm now a city kid, well, at least a town kid, but still kind of close to the country. So just a 2-bedroom house, pretty modest, just Mom, Dad, and me for most of the time. At the time, it certainly was not all Republican town. Certainly my father, who was a factory worker over in Mansfield, got a lot of literature from the International Union of Electrical Workers that just they advised him on how to vote. I got to introduce you to an acquaintance of mine, one I'm not necessarily so proud of. He's right over my shoulder here. Meet George. Yeah, George is a lawn jockey. And yes, George is painted black, just like he was, I'm sad to say, when we moved in. It's one of those deals, you're growing up in a small town, you don't even think of something like that. It's just, I mean, it held a little lantern for the steps that I'm standing on. So I thought it was a stupid way to light the steps, but I never even thought about anything related to race. You grow up in an all-white environment, you don't even think about things that could be offensive to, people of other cultures, people of other races, and it's one of those things you look back on in life and you're just so freaking appalled. It's like, how could you be so freaking insensitive? Race was just not really a factor in our lives, and I guess that's an aspect, if we're honest with ourselves, is a kind of white privilege. It's certainly a privilege not to have to be self-conscious about skin color. You don't have to worry about not getting served or people mistreating you simply because of the way you look, because you're in a community where everyone looks like you. So again, you move on to college, or even you play some sports in high school, and then in college, you actually do have different experiences. You meet African Americans, and it's actually a new experience. But it's one I didn't really have till I got out of high school and out of the little town environment. It's just not to say that everyone is just, ignorant racists here. I think that's too far. We're just, the ignorant part is quite possibly right. Certainly was in my case. But it's something hopefully we overcome. We get into the wider world, the broader world. Like many small towns, Jeromesville was built around churches. I lived here some 40 years ago. There were 3 churches: the Lutheran Church, the Methodist Church, and the Christian Church. Behind you is the Christian Church. That's the one that my family and I attended. A lot of memories from those days. Some teachers tried to impart the fear of God into me, and it works sometimes. Just a whole generation of dedicated volunteers, ladies with names like Blanche and Marguerite and Cordelia, who was nicknamed Dickie for reasons that I'm sure of today. Of course, they're long gone. One morning in this church building, they played the song "Just As I Am," and I came forward and was later baptized at a church camp near here. So you can tell a lot of roots go here. The reason I came here, though, is you look at modern polls, there's this phrase called white evangelicals as a descriptor of those taking a poll. Well, who are white evangelicals? First of all, almost every poll has them as self-described. So a lot of the folks here would probably be considered white evangelicals. But we risk lumping them all together at our peril, I think. It's again, we just want to explain so much by generalizations. We don't want to think anymore. So white evangelical, that means this, this, and this. Probably means you're uneducated, maybe racist, whatever. So at least a lot of assumptions aren't necessarily true. This particular church, it is the Christian church, so it's not considered a denomination. One of the phrases they like to say is, we're not the only Christians, but we are Christians only. And a lot of studies show that people who claim to be evangelicals are not, and a lot of people who should be defined as evangelicals are not in the poll. So again, no question the large majority of white evangelicals are for Donald Trump. But not all, and not all who say they're evangelicals are evangelicals. And again, so easy to stereotype. I was here a few days ago. This church doesn't even run 100 people now. And it's formed a group called Hillsdale Cares with more than a dozen other churches in the community. Hillsdale's the local school district. They serve 60 families food. And when I say serve, they actually deliver food to them. And they've been doing that for years, and it's been growing. I remember when I went here, there was like kind of one poor family, and we didn't quite know what to do with them. Do we take up a special offering? Do we give them something from the budget every week? Whatever. Now they're serving 60 families. It's just an amazing transformation. It shows how the economy has been rough on towns like these, but also it shows how a community can come together, in this case under the auspices of a church, and really work to improve the community. Thanks.